Today, I want to talk about not giving way to anger. This is the ninth of the Bodhisattva precepts in the grave precepts. I vow not to give way to anger. Or sometimes it's translated, I vow not to indulge in anger. And this is quite a rich precept. So let's spend some time today working through it. I've talked about anger quite a lot in this past year for kind of obvious reasons, I hope. There's a lot of anger really flaring in the world right now. And I'm wondering if we know the causes, if we know why. Why is there so much anger just exploding everywhere? Maybe we think we know the reasons, but today I'd like to encourage us to keep an open mind about what we think the causes of anger might be and see if we can, you know, drill down just a little bit. So, one thing we know for sure is that we all get angry. And if you never get angry, then I would encourage you to take a pause right here and ask yourself, do I get angry? Sometimes we think, oh no, I'm not an angry person, which is fine. Being not an angry person or not a person who often gets angry doesn't mean that we don't get angry. And it could mean that we're the kind of person who pushes away our anger. Or it could mean things just don't get to us very often. But one thing for sure is we all get angry. We can't avoid anger. Anger is a part of life. Anger happens that simply. So to think that we don't get angry would be a mistake. Where does anger come from? Well, anger comes from either something's blocking or preventing us, and we're frustrated by that. Or maybe we think we're being treated unfairly. Or from fear, anger as a fight response to fears that come our way. And certainly, even if we can't all agree that everyone gets angry, or maybe we'll just say that we all get angry, we can agree that there's a lot in the world right now to cause fear. At least I think we can agree on that. We have obviously a pandemic going on, a pandemic that comes from a virus that we could die from in a really nasty way. This causes people fear. Just to spell it out, this causes fear. What else causes fear? The threat of violence, maybe the threat of our way of life changing, the worry about having enough food, the worry about having a steady job, the worry about understanding the world we live in, the fear of safety for our lives. There's so many things that could cause fear. The fear of women, either being treated unfairly or perhaps fear for our lives. The fears of people of color, perhaps being treated unfairly or perhaps being killed. So many things that cause fear, you know? So when we respond to that with anger, both very naturally human and also counterproductive because anger is one of the three poisons as we know them in Buddhism: the poison of greed, the poison of anger, and the poison of delusion, things that cause harm to us. Anger is also the enemy of loving kindness or metta. Nothing kills the impulse to send loving kindness, to practice loving kindness, to be loving kindness for all beings, like anger. This blockage, this feeling of me being treated badly and you being the one who did it. This feeling of me and you that pulls us apart, takes us out of relationship, takes us out of interconnectedness, at least in our minds. The truth is, we can't take ourselves apart. Even if we think we're taken apart, separated through our anger, through our fears, we are still here in this world in relation to each other. And like it or not, this is what we have to work with. All beings in the universe are all worthy of our love, kindness, and compassion. All beings in the universe are Buddha nature. All beings in the universe are our family, our human family, our animal family, our tree family. Nothing in the entire universe is separate from everything else. So, like it or not, this is what we have to work with. What we have right here in our world right now: vaccine or no vaccine, mask or no mask, climate emergency, fires. This is our world. It's ours. And being angry at the way things are, or even directing that anger at the way things are toward particular people, pulls us apart. I wanted to take a few minutes to really dig a little bit more into what anger is. What is anger? And I wanted to share from the Ekman's Atlas of Emotions, the range of anger, because I think when we just say anger, it's such a big block of, I don't know what it feels like for you, but for me, it's kind of a deep red color and has a lot of intensity, maybe some heat, and feels a little bit, don't want to touch that. But anger has a range. It has not only a range of anger, but a range of reactions to the anger. So I'm gonna share that with you. So here is the range of anger. So up here, the different emotions. And here's anger. We get angry when something blocks us or when we think we're being treated unfairly, according to this particular definition of anger. So here we are. So you can see there's a range from the least intense to the most intense. And anger actually is really varied. So in the least intense, we have annoyance. And some even say boredom is down there. So where's boredom? Maybe, is it less intense than annoyance? I think maybe. It's like almost annoyance. So from annoyance to frustration to exasperation, argumentativeness, bitterness, vengefulness, and fury. Such a big range here things that we all call anger. So we can break it down a little bit. Figure out where we are in this. And as long as we are seeing anger as this giant cloud that covers everything, it's kind of hard to break it down. So come back to just this moment, to any anger you might be feeling in this moment, and then maybe to a particular situation, not the whole world or the whole universe or all those people, just one thing. And where are you in this? Maybe you're not feeling any anger. Maybe you're feeling frustration. What is frustration? Frustration is a response to repeated failures to overcome an obstacle. Huh, could be, right? Repeated failures to overcome an obstacle. What obstacle do we all share in our world right now? Is COVID-19 an obstacle? Maybe not the virus itself, but the obstacle might be not catching it. Repeated failures to overcome the obstacle of not catching COVID-19 can cause frustration. What else might cause frustration? Let's look at the other end of the spectrum. Fury. So pointy and big, right? Uncontrolled and often violent anger. Uncontrolled and often violent anger. I'm going to return to fury later in this talk. But fury is when we're just so blinded by our anger, it's really taken over our whole lives. And we may not even know what its source is by this time. It's just a blind way of being in the world that can really cause harm and violence. And this is a danger. So let's go one more down to annoyance. A very mild anger caused by a nuisance or an inconvenience. So this is where it begins, right? A nuisance or an inconvenience. Remember back in last March when we first had to stay home, we were like, all right, this isn't so fun. We're going to stay home. Everything's going to be fine in a couple of weeks. That's a minor nuisance or inconvenience. I don't want to stay home, but I'll do it for a while. You know, I don't like this mask. Where are we going to get a mask? Remember when everybody was sewing masks? You know, all right, we need a mask. That's a minor nuisance or an inconvenience. You know, we'll just sew some up and share with our neighbors and then we'll all be fine. What else is a minor nuisance or an inconvenience? Things that are minor nuisances or inconveniences can build up if we're not careful. Build up to frustration, to exasperation, to argumentativeness, to bitterness, to vengefulness, and finally to that blind rage called fury. I wanted to show you the ways that anger comes out. We think anger has just one or two ways of coming out, but look at all this stuff. You know, if we just think anger comes out as yelling, would be a mistake. There's so many ways. There's a dispute, passive aggression over here, you know, where we can't quite say, taking indirect actions that have an angry undercurrent. I love that expression. And then insults, quarrels, getting a little heated here. All that before we even get to screaming and yelling. And then there's screaming and yelling. Simmering or brooding. How about suppressing? Remember how I started this talk, encouraging those of us who say, I'm not angry, to have a second look. What is suppressing? Let's open that way. trying to avoid feeling or acting upon the emotion that is being experienced. Are we avoiding feeling or acting upon our emotion of anger? Using physical force, I think we can get that. And what about undermining? There was a book that came out many years ago called The Underminer. And let's see what the definition is. Taking action to make someone or something weaker or less effective, usually in a secret or gradual way. Chip, chip, chip. Undermining. There was a book that came out some years ago called The Underminer. And the book was, I think it was reviewed in one of the major newspapers. I remember reading excerpts from it. And I had such a strong reaction to The Underminer because I had experienced that with somebody who was in a position of power over me at the time. And the things I recall are the underminer would say, "Oh, hey, your hair is looking really, look at that. It's so fluffy, today. I don't use shampoo, it's got all those chemicals and I just like, let natural oils come in. But fluffy's fine. If you like that kind of thing." So, and it felt, right, it seems funny if you just think about it. But when you experience it, it's not funny at all. It really hurts. What was another thing the underminer did? Oh, I saw that you had that little piece published in that little, obscure magazine. Congratulations, I'm so happy for you. You must have worked so hard to get that done. Yeah, on my third novel, which has been reviewed in the New York Times, and it was really great. I was so nervous, but it came out great. And now I'm, best-selling author, and I understand how that is for you to, etc. So again, almost funny, but not really funny. It really can hurt. And these are the ways anger can come out. Not just rage and screaming and hurting, but also just bringing them down a peg secretly. A few weeks ago, we talked about I vow not to put myself up and to put others down. And when we vow this, not to put myself up and put others down, when we put ourselves up, we inevitably put others down. We have to step on them to get up. And when we are stepped on, when we're down, others are inevitably up. It goes both ways. So if we put ourselves down and put others up, then that's also unnatural. So when we vow not to put myself up and put others down, is that how we can practice being in relationship with others as equals, as all having good in nature? So back to our friend anger. True happiness doesn't come from out there. We hear this so many times in Buddhist teachings. True happiness comes from in here, not out there. And yet when the world becomes so challenging to walk through, we can forget that very easily. So what are we going to do in a world that's full of the harm and the danger that's caused by anger? How do we move through it? How do we acknowledge the anger that we're feeling and stay in relationship with others without pushing them away, without making them evil, without giving into our fury? So we start with ourselves, as with everything, by looking at our own reactions, our own thoughts, our own anger, and we move through in this way, not avoiding. Remember the things that come up when we try to avoid anger? That's seething, passive aggression, undermining. Subtle things come in when we try to avoid it. So we start with ourselves, as with all, by acknowledging the feelings that we're feeling, whether we like them or not, and being present. And we start with our own minds. If we're able to work with the anger that comes up for us, then our external circumstances no longer sweep us around. So how are we going to be here? One way is just by knowing, really naming and knowing the harm that anger causes. When we can acknowledge that, then that, don't touch the hot stove feeling, when that can come up, and we can condition ourselves to recognize that. So I already talked about the separation that comes in from pushing others away. Anger, of course, causes us to hurt others, both through our words and through our actions. In one of our discussions this week, we talked about the harm that can come through words, the harm we can cause through words. And as people shared their stories of a time that they hurt somebody through their words, what I remember feeling is so much love and tenderness for the person who caused the harm. Because what I saw as people shared those stories was pain. Definitely some shame, and also just pain. We can cultivate a tenderness for ourselves in the same way. Sometimes we say stuff that's not okay, and immediately shutting down or pushing that away doesn't help us to work through it. We have to lean in. As Brené Brown, the social work researcher, says, we can choose 10 seconds of discomfort over years of resentment. Choose a short amount of discomfort. Don't want to say anything. I don't want to say anything, but I'm so angry, or I feel so hurt, or I feel so scared. Don't want to say anything, but I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. And then when you said, I always push ahead of you, I felt so surprised and hurt. Is that true? Do I do that? Can we talk about that? And then we have the chance to stay in a relationship. It takes a certain amount of courage and a certain amount of patience to do it. And we can cultivate that through our zazen practice, as with all. As we learn to sit, following our breath, watching our thoughts rise and pass away, watching our feelings arise and pass away, returning to the breath. We learn that this cycle that happens is the way that life is. And it gives us a kind of a spaciousness, and the patience can come out of that. I'm feeling this overwhelming anger right now, and I definitely don't want to cause harm, and it will pass. And I want to be in relationship with the world, not pulling myself out of it. I can do it with the support of the community. It takes all of the teachings to help us show up to our most significant challenges. So if we keep practicing anger and not practicing patience and loving kindness, then anger becomes our way of being. becomes a habit. And it not only harms those in our orbit, it harms ourselves. It really hurts us, can affect our health, can make us depressed, can cause accidents on the road or walking even, can lead toward abuse of intoxicants, can lead toward abuse of the intoxicant of even getting angry because there's kind of a charge in getting angry. We feel powerful and big. That can also be an intoxicant. Can lead to an undercurrent of a constant worry and anxiety. And we can turn all of that on ourselves. Anger can be dangerous. One of the Zen teachers I worked with in Japan would say, and the Buddha has often also said this, but in the moment of anger, if we don't truly make it our own, it will turn everything to ash. We have to start by acknowledging that it's here and creating a willingness to be present, to learn from it, to be human. Again, we all get angry. We can't avoid it. It's just the way things are as humans. But as we cultivate loving kindness, as we cultivate patience, then we can really let the flame of anger die down. And then the anger in the world around us no longer makes us flare up so strongly. We also talked about not harboring ill will a few weeks ago, the precept, I vow not to harbor ill will. And I wanted to revisit that as the way that anger can go. And that's echoed in the Atlas of Emotions that I just showed you. So in the teachings of the Lamrim from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, ill will unfolds like this. First, we feel an aversion. Next, we feel that our aversion is unbearable. We can't let it go. I can't take this. It's unbearable. And then we start thinking and thinking and thinking about it. We can't stop it. And it grows and it becomes this strong anger within us that we just can't let go. And out of that inability to let go, we develop the wish to retaliate, to get even. And then before we know it, ill will has arisen. So those are the 5 steps. An aversion, the feeling that it's unbearable, inability to stop thinking about it, and the anger of that, wish to retaliate, and then ill will. Before we know it, we're over there in fury, where we're stuck. This hot, uncontrollable wish to harm can come in, sometimes in a very sneaky way, and sometimes through the front door. We don't have to let it in. We have the tools that we need to work with anger. We just have to use them. So again, starting with the breath, using the patience that we have cultivated through our Zazen practice. Just take an extra moment to insert a pause right there. Or maybe a few pauses. And then the fearlessness that we cultivate through our practice of staying present, of speaking with the person, of staying in relationship. And then also through the loving kindness, which is the antidote to the anger. Seeing everyone just like me. This person wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer, just like me. This person has Buddha nature, just like me. We all want the same thing. We all want to be happy. and not to suffer. This week, there was a really interesting video segment in the New York Times on people in Arkansas who were sick due to COVID-19 and not being vaccinated. And I found this piece so touching because it didn't other the people who were being interviewed. They came across as very human. They had different ideas. Different people had different ideas about feelings around the vaccine, feelings about being told what to do, feelings about wearing masks. And yet, when you saw these people lying there in the ICU of a hospital, receiving oxygen, it was really hard to hate them. What I saw were humans who were suffering in a really, really terrible way. And my humanness would not allow that to be okay. No matter what their views are, no matter what caused this illness, we all want to be happy and not to suffer. And seeing this in each other, this essential humanness that we all share, it's impossible to hate. We can come back to that. Even the person that we hate the most, we can find some feeling of tenderness, some human quality, something that makes them sad or happy, watching them with their little dog or seeing the way that they treat their grandchild. We can come back into a relationship. And if you're feeling if you're feeling anger for this whole bunch of people at once, I would encourage you to dial it back. Come back to just one person at a time. Somebody you know, not someone you saw on TV only, someone you have a relationship with, someone you maybe care about or cared about at one time. One person at a time. And through this care and concern for one human being, we can grow the ability to care for the entire world. Thank you.